Hello folks and welcome to the weekend warm-up with me, Will Buxton, and him, Lawrence Barretto. And we are back at a beautiful Spa-Francorchamps shop. It is wonderful to be back, isn't it?
Oh, it's glorious. I love this place, deep in the Ardennes forest. And the motorhomes are back. Look at them in all their glory.
Yes, we're not allowed in them.
We're not.
No free coffees for us.
No, but they're here, and the coffee's just there.
There's no guests.
No.
But the teams can have their own food now, so they're very happy
delighted,
about that.
aren't they?
They're so, I mean, literally, it's the best thing that's happened to them all year. They're so happy. We've got a lot to catch up on, actually. It's been a very busy week. First and foremost, Concord Agreement signed.
Oh, I'll tell you what, I wasn't sure that we would get it done after all those aggravations between the team bosses. We've got it over the line. All 10 said yes. We've got the future mapped out for the next 5 years in Formula One. It's brilliant.
You say we didn't have much to do with it.
We didn't. No, but we.
But it is great. it is great for the future of the sport. One thing that you said, which I thought was very pertinent, Haas have signed up, and there were so many questions over whether Haas would commit a long-term future for Formula One, and that's great to see. Really wonderful. But it seems to have just all happened very quickly. Very
quickly, especially considering at Silverstone there were so many team bosses frustrated that some teams, perhaps like Mercedes, weren't that keen on putting pen to paper, but they got it over the line, and I think that's the main thing. And like you said, Haas, I think it's great Gene is committed because he's brought a new model into Formula One and he's shown that it's worked.
Now, one other big piece of news occurred right down here at Williams. Sold. Or bought, we should say.
Yes. By an American company, investment firm, that essentially will give Williams the funds to compete in the future. And I think when Claire Williams was talking about the fact that they are potentially going to sell the whole team, or a minority stake in the team, they wanted to primarily save the future of the Williams brand and the people that work for it. And this deal has done exactly that. Yeah,
I mean, it's looking very promising for them. We don't know exactly what the management structure will look like into the future. I know they're doing sort of a deep dive on that at the moment to see how they want it to be. But as you've said, it secures the team's future. It secures the jobs of all the folks there and means that the name Williams will stay above the door. So Frank signed off on it. He's happy with the direction that the team will go in. And I guess all we can do is be thankful that Williams will remain and will remain racing in Formula One.
Exactly. It's going to take some time for them to work it out, what the management structure is, what departments they need to put the funding into, because it's a great facility that they've got at Grove, but it's going to take some time for them to understand what needs the cash.
And it's not going to be an easy weekend for them. Very draggy car is not going to be suited to this track.
George loves that word, draggy, doesn't he?
Does,
said it quite a few times.
Yes.
I think they've all accepted that Belgium and Monza are going to be very difficult for them. But, you know, if those are two races in what has been an otherwise very positive season, I think they've got to be encouraged by what they've been doing.
They're going to have a hard weekend as well. Alfa Romeo, not looking forward to it. Obviously, the Ferrari-powered cars, they don't really look forward to these power circuits, and Spa and Monza will be difficult for them.
Yes, exactly. I think for Kimi, he's got very fond memories largely of Spa, so it's going to be a very difficult thing for him to go out there in a car that really isn't going to be able to compete.
I had a great chat with Kimi earlier today, and I sort of said, you know, does it matter to you the version of the track? You know, everybody says, oh, you know, they want to go back to when it was just curbs and grass without the runoff, or bring back the gravel. Like, you know, with Kimi, you sort of say, which version of the track do you like the best? And he was just like, oh, I don't care. And, you know, but he did. He was just like, no, I loved it with the bus stop, and I loved the gravel runoff because there was a penalty. If you made a mistake, there was a penalty, and now there's not. And he said, I loved that, you know, that early version of the track from when I first raced here. You know, that was the one that Kimi loved.
He just gets excited about this track. So just the way you were describing it just now, even in the press conference earlier today, he was just excited to be back here. He still loves driving. I think we sometimes forget that. Maybe he doesn't come across as if he's enjoying it. But he's loving it here. He definitely wouldn't be tracking around at the back if he wasn't loving it.
One guy loving it at the moment, Charlie Boy. Of course, last year's race winner, Charles Leclerc. Really looking forward to being back here. He's punched above the weight of the car so many times this season, but Ferrari are aware that it's going to be a hard weekend for them as well. Not really, I don't think, much confidence that they'll be punching for a podium here.
No, I mean, they've had quite good memories of this place in recent years, but it's going to be a real tough weekend all round. Particularly, I think, for Sebastian, who's been on those fringes of the Q3. I think here he's going to struggle even more to get close.
Yes. Speaking, though, of teams which could struggle, McLaren had sort of said that they'd overachieved in those early races and they were expecting to struggle more as the season went on. And yet today, talking to both of the guys, they're really hopeful of a couple of good weekends because, like Austria, like Silverstone, low downforce, big power track, could suit them.
Definitely, I think there's a couple of things here. Carlos has got huge confidence after that result in Spain on home soil. He's had a really rubbish season, effectively.
Yes.
And things finally went his way, so I think he's coming here with a huge momentum. I think with Lando, he's had momentum from the minute that the season started.
Yeah, he's looking great.
And that is a really handy car. They got it operating very well, especially if they got on top of that engine issue that Carlos had in Spain. I think they are, of the midfield teams, the ones that can operationally do the best job. And I think at a racetrack like Spa, especially if it's going to be unpredictable with the weather, I think those guys can capitalise on it.
Good stuff. Don't worry, Steve. Dwayne's got your back. You won't fall over just yet. Who should we talk about next? Let's talk about Racing Point here, who've you might have noticed everybody's sort of brought their small mini versions of their motorhomes. Not Racing Point. They've gone for the full massive one. Oh, let's talk about Max, actually, seeing as Max is right there. Oh, come on, Max. We talk a little bit about you.
What do you want to say?
There's so much
What do you want us to say?
Max is a Dutch. I don't know what he's doing. I don't even
Max is a Dutch and I don't know what he's doing. There you go, from his own mouth. He's feeling really good, actually, at the moment, talking to him earlier today. Obviously, he's going to miss the crowd. He's going to miss all of his fans. But he knows he's got such a solid car underneath him. And really, is he, and this is a question for you, do you think he's the only one that can take it to Lewis this year?
I do. I think so. I know that might seem strange given there's a guy in the same car as Lewis alongside him in the garage, but Max has driven brilliantly this year. Every time he's finished a race, he's been on the podium. He's in the car with a Honda engine that we were criticising only a couple of years ago, and that's performing. The Red Bull has still been a tricky car, and he's managed to get the most out of it. Alex is a very strong driver, and he struggled somewhat, so it shows what kind of job that Max is doing.
Well, and Jensen, Button, both British World Champions. I'll get them right. Jensen said he believed that Max was annihilating his second drivers, his teammates, in a way that only the likes of Schumacher and Senna have done before. And I put that to Max earlier today, and Max sort of did his, look, I don't like being compared to other drivers, even though they're not bad drivers to be compared to. And he said, look, it's lovely to hear that, but I just want to push myself to be better. And that's the thing. He's not resting on his laurels. He's pushing himself to go better, go harder every single weekend. And you know, that second seat might be a poison chalice, but when you're going up against someone like Max Verstappen, how are you ever supposed to look good?
It's always going to be difficult, and I think the nature of what Alex has achieved this year shows that how difficult it is to prove that you are a very, very strong driver. Alex has had great results this year, relatively speaking.
I mean, you say great.
But I mean it in the sense that versus other teammates that have gone up against Max. And that's, again, this is the debate, isn't it? That we've got to kind of, you've always got to have that upper level and then that second level. And I think Alex is kind of competing in that level, in that realm.
And actually that falls in line with what Helmut Marko was saying this week, is that actually they're really impressed with Alex and the job that he's been doing. They're going to give him all of their support, a rarity.
Which is very un-Red Bull, isn't it?
Very un-Red Bull. So, you know, we hope that that is legitimate and not, and I think as we've said before, again, the curse of the Christian and Helmut, we've got all faith in you, because they normally say that, and 3 weeks later they're biffed out of the team. You know, it's the football analogy. As soon as you get the backing of the board, the manager's packing his stuff, because you know you're out as soon as you get the backing of the board. Anyway, we'll talk quickly about AlphaTauri. Don't worry, Steve, we won't make you walk backwards again. They're just there. Been a great start to the season for Pierre Gasly. Charles Leclerc saying that he thinks Gasly is the most impressive driver in the sport this year, and Gasly is having a great run.
He has had a superb run this year, and I know the results perhaps across the board haven't shown it, but on the races that he has finished in the points, he's been one of the best drivers in the field. And I think it says a lot about Pierre, his character, the way that he bounced back from that really tough time at Red Bull to have a really strong end to the last season and then hit the ground running in a car that he's also got Daniel Kvyat, who's doing a great job.
Should we do the walkie backwards thing now?
Let's try that.
We'll save Steve.
We haven't got anyone spotting us.
I know, we'll be all right. So we were talking about Racing Point, and I want to talk a little bit about Sergio Perez. Brilliant comeback in Spain. Great race. He feels aggrieved about the blue flag incident, but I spoke to Manuel Pirro after the race, and he said he'd got it, I think, on the entry to turn 5, and then hadn't let him through until the start-finish straight. So really, you can't argue about that, can he?
No, that would be a difficult one to argue, should we say?
I think so. But Checo today says he's not talking to any teams other than Racing Point about racing for them next season.
No.
And that pulls it back to what we said right at the start of this, when all of those rumours started to come out about will Vettel go to Racing Point, blah, blah, blah. And I said, remember, it was on this show, I said to you, I don't think they can afford to get rid of him. I think he's locked in. His sponsors want him to be there.
Yes.
They do bring a lot of money, regardless of how much investment and whatever Aston Martin are bringing and Lawrence Stroll and Bob, whatever. I don't think losing Checo is something they want to do. And I'm still not convinced that Seb to Aston Martin is the done deal that everyone thinks it is.
I think the longer this goes on, the less likely it is to happen. I think when Checo came back, Racing Point was so keen to have him back in the car. That's why they were testing him so often. They knew that if they had him back in the car, they would maximise the potential of this car. That car should be finishing second, really.
As it might be able to do this weekend. This is the kind of circuit that should really play to that pink car's strength. Low downforce, big engine track. They could have a podium this weekend.
Unless it rains. And that car is not very good in the wet stuff. And as Lance kind of hinted today, I think they would be desperate for it to stay clear. Desperate.
Can anyone beat these guys at the moment? Mercedes?
I don't think so.
No, Steve's walking backwards again.
I don't think anyone can beat these guys. I think Lewis is in the form of his life. I think Valtteri... I think Max could potentially beat Valtteri here, but I think generally speaking, it's difficult to look past these guys for a winner.
Yeah, no, very much so. Lewis saying earlier today, it's great they've now got the 17 race calendar locked in, and a lot of drivers talking about this actually, because it's not only do they know where they're going to be racing, not only do they know then how they can play the engine management. Bring their updates, but for the drivers as well, they can figure out when they can get a break, how they need to train in order to be at their peak all the way through, because that was the hardest part with the calendar as it was, not knowing what came next. Well, when do you get your break period? How are you training? How are you sort of maintaining yourself at your peak? And I think at least they know now.
Yeah, I think mentally it's a huge challenge that I think is often underappreciated. When you don't know when you're going to have a weekend off, a week off maybe, just to recharge, and recharging in Formula 1 because it's such a high pressure sport, it's so important. Lewis though, I mean, he's the best of the best, and when he was talking today in the press conference, he just seemed supremely confident, happy to be back at this place that he knows he can run really well at. He did mention that he thought Red Bull was still a threat for the title, which I thought was interesting. I do think he genuinely recognises that threat from Max. I do think that, I know he appreciates the car's not quite up there to compete, but I do think genuinely he thinks that Max could, on his day, cause him real problems.
We touched on it briefly there, the calendar, another thing that has been finalised since we last spoke to you guys. 17 races, including a return to Istanbul.
Turkey, yes.
2 races in Bahrain. Lots of talk about what configurations we might or might not be running there. That'll be fascinating. But yeah, 17 races, most of them in Europe, a couple of flyaways. This is the season I signed up for 20 years ago, mate. This was what it was back then. It's great. It's great.
It's extraordinary, really, that we've got to this point, 17 races in a year that's had so much disruption, an international championship going to so many countries. I think
and obviously we work for Formula 1, so people are going to say, oh, they've been told to say that. But genuinely great job.
But it's not just us, though, is it, that's been saying it, though?
But F1, FIA, everybody, to get it all done together in a short period of time, to get a 17-race international calendar done, it's phenomenal. It's a really phenomenal job. Right, Haas. Spoke to Grosjean. You won't believe this.
What did he say?
So this is unreal. So last week, you remember, Grosjean, 5th, 6th on Friday, said the car's the best it's been all year. Saturday, nothing. They had rebuilt the car overnight, new engine, new gearbox, parts of the car that had reached the end of their life, they had new parts on, all of that kind of stuff, set up exactly as it should have been. Faulty sensor on the car gave them duff readings on a Saturday morning, so they changed the setup to account for the duff reading, which meant the car was basically worthless from that point on. So they've realised the sensor was faulty. Car should be great this weekend, but maybe Spain was their shot and it's gone, and it's so sad.
That was the one track, that's the Haas track, that's Haas spec, is Barcelona, but actually that was put to Günther in his written press today, the sensor thing, and he said no.
Oh, you're kidding?
Yeah.
So Roman's given me duff info?
No, not just you, Roman was saying that generally today. It was more that Günther was saying it's just the car's wind sensitive, and so they just got caught out by that. So,
but 5th, 6th, the plum last and not being able to drive the thing?
Yes, I know. I mean, we've been here before with Haas not quite knowing what's going on with their car, haven't we?
We have. Now, of course, we finished down here at Renault, and we finished down here for a reason, because, of course, we're we're very, very happy to be back here in Spa. We're very, very happy to be back racing. But we do so this weekend with Antoine Hubert very much in all of our thoughts, in all of our memories. It was 1 year, of course, since the absolutely tragic events of last year, which affected so many people in this paddock, down in the F2 and F3 paddocks as well, and motorsport fans from around the world. And every single interview today with the drivers, everybody had an opinion, a thought on the realities of what it is to go racing.
Yeah, Sebastian was saying how it's going to be in everyone's minds, even when they're in the cockpit. And also, it was the first thing that when they obviously step foot into this venue, it was the first thing they think about, because at the end of the day, they're all racers, and they all know what it means to be here and to be racing. And it clearly affected them, and it's going to be an emotional weekend for everybody.
Yeah, it really will be. Pierre, we were talking about Pierre Gasly earlier, one of the guys who grew up with Antoine. They were roommates together. They were best mates. You think poor Pierre last year had just been demoted by Red Bull, came here, he lost his best mate, and just has gone through a torrid year, and he got burgled last week coming back from the Spanish Grand Prix. You hope that brings an end to that hideous year for him. But Antoine's mother both went to Charles on the morning of the race last year, and they said, you've got to win it for Antoine, because they all, Charles as well, they all grew up together, and Charles went out, won the race for his mate. And it talking to the drivers today about how do you compartmentalise the emotion on one side and the realities of what you do on the other, and talking to George Russell about it, and him sort of saying, you pull on the visor, you pull on the helmet and pull down the visor, and you go into another plane. And it reminded me of talking to Sir Jackie Stewart when he was talking about losing Jochen Rindt 50 years ago, actually, at Spa, and how he was in floods of tears, and then pulls on the helmet, gets in, runs the fastest lap he'd ever run at Monza, came back to the pits, pulled off the helmet, and just started crying again. These guys have this unbelievable ability to drive through those emotions, almost put them to one side. Although Charles said, interestingly, almost all of them said to me today, we can drive, we can put it to one side and drive and not think about it. Charles said he had the emotion all the way through the race, thought about it every time he got to the top of Eau Rouge, every time he went past that spot, thought about it and used it as inspiration
and motivation, I guess.
Unbelievable. They truly are incredible. It's why we stellify them to the extent that we do. Incredible gladiators. So yes, we race this weekend. They race this weekend in Antoine's memory. Great kid. Wish we could have seen what he would have gone on to achieve. Right, Lawrence, from me. We haven't even talked about Renault though, but they're quite looking forward to quite a good weekend. I think they're quite optimistic, aren't they?
Esteban's got a new engine this weekend, and so he's quite hopeful that that's going to give him. Get on top of the deficit that he seems to have had to Daniel, because Daniel changed his engine a little bit earlier. So he's hoping that they've got a few new changes to the car as well. So I think they're pretty hopeful of a stronger result here. And
they've pulled their appeal.
Oh, they have.
In the racing point case, they've pulled their appeal.
We always got through weekend warm-up without talking about the appeal.
Despite saying they wouldn't be happy unless Racing Point lost all of their points for this season so far, for some reason they've said we're going to pull out. Let's not go there, Lawrence. Right, that's it. That is your lot. Don't forget, you can hear from all of the drivers. You heard from Max earlier, potty-mouthed Verstappen. But from the other drivers, you can hear from them on Paddock Pass, which, of course, comes your way on F1 TV, on F1.com, and on Spotify. Lawrence, how much do you have to pay for it to listen to it on Spotify?
It's free.
Is it free?
It's free.
It's free.
Absolutely
on Spotify.
Nothing.
Do you have to have an account on Spotify, or is it free for everyone?
It is free for everyone, but it's helpful if you get an account, because then you can subscribe.
You can indeed.
Yes.
Listen to the man. He knows what's going on. Right, that is your lot, folks. Thanks so much for tuning into Weekend Warm-Up. Can't wait. The weather's going to be iffy all weekend. It always is. It's Spa. But from me, thanks very much. We'll see you later.